Hmm.
So now we'll go to the traditional coal, standard coal, which is bituminous coal. You can see it, Appalachia, they're still mining it on the west side of the Appalachian Mountains, southern Indiana, western Kentucky, eastern Kentucky, Tennessee, and down into Alabama. They had nice bituminous coal down there, but they also had iron ore and they had limestone. So that's why U.S. Steel basically put Birmingham on the map with steel mills because they had everything right down there. So they said, well, let's make steel down there. And of course, Illinois is just covered with it. Now Iowa had a lot of, it's a lot of coal down in this area, but it's not very good grade. They burned it in the early part of the, in the trains in the early part of the 1900s, but it pretty soon they just found it's pretty high ash, and so it would foul the boilers and stuff. So it gradually went away. But you see here's a traditional Norfolk and Western car, which judging by the number 96,159, you know, they had a lot of them. They had a lot of these. This is a 34-foot twin hopper, and it's full of standard bituminous coal. Again, it's a little less than anthracite. The problem with it is 3 to 4% sulfur. Typically, it can vary up and down, but it burns easily. It's relatively clean burning, mostly underground mining, so it costs a little bit more, and at the mine.
And you know, so going back to the map, looking at that map, you know, I grew up in central Ohio, and we would drive over to Pennsylvania from time to time, and that eastern Ohio looked like a moonscape. It had been strip mined.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Apparently in the late 40s, early 50s, there was a governor in Ohio named Frank Lausche, and he forced through legislation to force the mining companies to reclaim the land after they had screwed it all up, because up until that time, it wasn't necessary. And of course, all the stuff that was grandfathered in before the legislation, you just drive through it, and it was just awful. It was ruined. There was no topsoil, no vegetation. There's absolutely nothing you could do with it.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know they later they make them like out west. Yep. You'll see reclaimed land after the mine's gone, and it's pretty much the same as it was, a little bit smoother, but about 50 feet lower. I mean, but I didn't know that they had done that in Ohio. That's interesting. So I bet he got a lot of pushback. Oh, yep. But probably the public was probably pretty happy about that. Interesting. Thanks, Craig. Okay, and so then we go to Western coal, and this is subbituminous coal. And again, it's this area here, and the big one is Wyoming, and then up into Montana. There's also some other areas that have it, but the big one is right here in Wyoming. And it's about 2/3 of the BTUs, but it's 1/10 of the sulfur, 1/5 to 1/10 of the sulfur, and that turned out to be a huge issue. But it's difficult to burn in the boiler, and I can tell you because I was at a plant when we switched from bituminous coal to burn the Western coals, and it likes to burn outside, but it doesn't like to burn in the boiler. So it was very challenging, and the problem is it has some calcium in it. And so if it gets wet, the calcium is an exothermic reaction. It gets hot and then it starts on fire. And so you put water on it and it gets worse. So the guys learned they had to go out there and basically you spread the fire around and bury it. You have to go with bulldozers and scrapers and bury it constantly. So they have to work the piles all the time. It's very friable, quite dusty, mostly open pit mining. But the big difference between this coal in Wyoming and Montana is huge, thick seams, unbelievably thick seams. You'll see out much, and so of course the cost at the mine is extremely low. And then the lignite is the next one, and that's only about half the BTUs of bituminous coal. It's relatively clean, 0.5 to 1% sulfur. It burns slowly because it has like 25–30% moisture. So you got to evaporate all that moisture first. Mostly open pit mining. The cost is low, but you need to burn a lot. Now, this is a picture I got off the internet. It's at the mine in southwest North Dakota. And this is a Milwaukee unit train. And they would run, see if I can get the map here. They would run, the mine is like where the D is, and that's actually North Dakota. And then would run into South Dakota. This is the main line of the Milwaukee Road right here, where they used to go to Seattle. And they would run from here over to the plant in Ortonville, South Dakota, and back and forth. And and it was they had unit trains, but you see there's special covers on top of the gondolas, because they found it's so dusty that it's wet, but as soon as it dries off, they were losing like 10% of the coal on the way across the state. So that's two problems. One is you're losing a lot of your product. Number two, anybody living near the train track wouldn't be too happy with all this lignite dust coming around. So, so this
Isn't there
train,
also a problem with the dust filling up the tracks and in between the ballast?
yes,
Or
absolutely.
is that a minor issue?
Yes, it became a huge issue. Here, not quite so much because there was only one train a day. But out in the Powder River, yeah, they had trains would just literally they got a lot of dust in here and it would get wet, and when it would rain, the train would just kind of lean over on its side, and so they had to go in there and clean the ballast. A huge effort to clean the ballast every
I'd like to be riding in the caboose on that train.
Yeah. But it has covers, and so they actually put hinged covers on top of the coal cars. And so the Burlington Northern, I think the state of South Dakota bought this line, but the Burlington Northern operates it, and they still provide coal to this plant, this Otter Tail Power plant in here. So they're running these, and the BN also runs trains on this line because it's a pretty good line. And this thing is full of coal and other stuff. So that's the old NP. So then we go to, so again, lignite is this area, and primarily there's a little bit in Texas as well. Then we go to coke and metallurgical coke. It's made from coal. If you remember, this is Copper's Coke over in St. Paul by Snelling Avenue. And they would just put coal, bituminous coal, in and other coals in an oven, and they bake off all of the volatiles, and you're like making anthracite coal, except it's pretty clean, and it's almost pure carbon. And then they would ship that to the steel mills, and then they add that to the iron ore and some other things, and they would make steel. So that's how they got the carbon and to make carbon steel. And this plant operated until the 70s, because you can see here the BN cars are being shunted around. This is actually a picture from John Hill that's on the internet. So thank you, John. And then the other type of coke is petroleum coke, and this is a picture off the internet of coke refining. And they basically, when they refine crude oil, they heat it up, and then at the highest boiling point, items go off first. So first thing that goes off is natural gas and some other things like that, and then gasoline is the next one, and then they keep going down to diesel oil, and then distillate, and then heavy oils, and finally they get down to a solid. And so they have these things over here. It gets over here, and they make coke in these three things with towers, and then they have these machines that take the coke out. And the utilities used to burn it, but a big problem, of course, there's sulfur in the oil. You end up with sulfur in the coke. The other problem is any metals that you have if there's trace metals in the petroleum, they became quite concentrated. So you end up with vanadium and cadmium and all sorts of other stuff. But they still are using this coke because it's a pretty good portion of the product. It's after they get done with the crude oil, it's 20-some%. So Anyway, I see it's our bewitching hour, so I apologize for being late today. I had a senior moment there, and I go, whoa. So anyway, well, we will continue this.
Okay.
So do you have any questions before we sign off?
Hey, just wanted to say the guy's name was Frank Abagnale, and I found a clip where he was interviewed on Johnny Carson, and I sent all you guys the link to it.
This is the guy, Catch Me If You Can.
He's the Catch Me If You Can guy.
Okay,
But
very
it was
interesting.
very interesting because that was before the movie was made, and it was about a 20-minute interview with Johnny Carson. It's very entertaining. So check it out.
Okay, we will watch that.
And
Thank
Ross,
you.
that photograph that came from John Hill, that was along Snelling Avenue, you said?
Yeah, this is east of,
Oh, that's down in Newport, isn't it?
no, this is Newport. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the, do you see coke refining?
Oh, is that the one that's in the Midway then?
Yes.
Oh,
wow.
I was thinking that was down along Highway 61.
No,
That's not-
that's petroleum coke they make down there. This was actually coke, and it's coke,
Yeah.
Copper's coke.
Copper's
They
Coke.
bring-
Okay, I remember that.
They would bring coal in here, and then they would put it in ovens and make coke, various different types of coke, and then they would ship it to steel mills.
Okay,
Huh.
cool.
And the plant was here because they used to make steel up in Duluth.
Ah.
And so they hauled it up there. But yeah, it's I think it's probably, he took this from the Snelling Bridge. So he's looking east. This is Lexington down here. And he's
Okay.
looking east from, and this is of course the Great Northern passenger mains and the
Northern,
Great Northern freight mains,
Okay.
which are now
Cool.
BNSF, of course. So
Yes. Interesting.
Yeah, no kidding.
so anyway, we will continue next month. And thank
Okay.
you for coming on.